This Kingpin Chronicles. I'm DP, and today we're going to travel back to the 1920s South in St. Petersburg, Florida, where a man named Charlie Williams quietly built an empire of numbers, moonshine, and influence. In a segregated Florida city, where the color of your skin often determines your ceiling, Charlie didn't just break the rules, he rewrote them. They called him a criminal, they called him a kingpin. But to many in St. Petersburg's black community, he was something more. A provider, a protector, a legend. This is the story of Charlie Williams, the Bolita banker of St. Petersburg, Florida. To understand Charlie Williams, you have to understand the world he came up in. Born into segregation, Charlie started his career like many black men of the early 20th century, carrying bags on the train, right? He worked as a railroad porter, one of the few respectable jobs available to a black man in that era. But Charlie wasn't interested in staying invisible. By the 1920s, he found himself involved in something bigger: Bolita, moonshine, and politics. In 1921, Charlie fought the Seaboard and Coastline Railroad companies for building on his property and causing damage. They put up a fight, but Charlie would win the case, and the hearts of other people in his community were standing up to racial injustice. Bolita was like a lottery, right? Like a lottery style numbers game, right? It was illegal, yes, but it was widespread, right? Especially in places where black and immigrant communities were excluded from traditional economic life. Charlie's supreme control of the moonshine and Bolita game had gained him notoriety in both neighborhood and law enforcement conversations. For Charlie, this was more than just a hustle. It was his path straight to power. Oh, Charlie didn't just deal in Bolita, he dominated it. St. Petersburg, he was the man you saw if you wanted to play the numbers. He also ran moonshine during prohibition, and everyone knew it, but somehow the law never stuck. He would always smash cases in court, paying good lawyers. They would raid his homes, pull his cars, no matter what they found. Old Charlie found a way to shake their ass off. As usual, with overzealous officers, they would always find a way to blow the cases they had on Charlie, or what they thought they had. Sometimes, it seemed as if Charlie had help. They would get a tip and raid Charlie's spot, but by the time they hit, there was no evidence of crime whatsoever. In 1933, 15 officers raided his home, looking for tickets and gambling slips. Nothing. 4 years later, they came back and found $50,000 in cash, but again, no records, no conviction. Charlie knew the game better than anyone, and he knew how to play the cops, the politicians, and the streets. Some say he was connected to the Tampa Mafia, especially Santo Trafficante Jr. Name that still echoes in Florida's Underworld issue. Whether or not Charlie was made, one thing's clear: he was respected on both sides of the bridge in the Bay Area. Now here's where things get interesting. Charlie was not just a hustler. He was also what you might call a shadow male, right? He was the leader of the Elks and was able to be the voice for the blacks in the segregated city where blacks could vote during these early times in the country, you know. Politics was very racially divided, especially in the South. And Charlie was able to make the connections to make sure his community's voice would most definitely be heard. Segregated South, when the banks wouldn't give you a loan, when the city ignored your neighborhood, Charlie stepped in. He financed black-owned businesses, helped neighbors make rent, donated to churches and schools. He was a high roller who remembered the little people from where he came from. One local writer, Norman Jones Sr., said that men like Charlie ran politics. They controlled patronage and gave aid when government systems failed. Charlie wasn't elected, but he held power. And when he walked down 22nd Street South, people noticed. This way back, we talking about the original Deuces in St. Pete, Florida. They knew that he could sway black voters at the time when black votes still held weight in St. Petersburg, despite white primaries, despite intimidation. Political candidates, even white ones, came to Charlie for support. And when he died, some of those same officials sent funeral rites. He often carried a pistol, right, in plain sight. Authorities knew, but they didn't intervene. Why? Because Charlie had influence. Now this is the twist that I know you didn't see coming. Despite being a known bootlegger and a gambler, Charlie Williams was a deputy. That's right, man. He held an honorary deputy badge given to him by a white sheriff in the South. Charlie had been booming, but by 1953, Tampa was boiling. For unknown reasons, early narcotics trafficking and mafia activities had been ignored by Harry Hoover and the FBI. It wasn't until Lucky Luciano got busted dealing heroin and cooperated with the feds that the mafia began being investigated. He would then be deported back to Italy and run the New York families from there. The American Mafia seems to have been led by Trafficante Jr., right? He was also under attack. In January of that year, someone tried to take him out. Gunfire in the streets, right? He had inherited the connection of pure China white heroin from France, and everybody wanted control. By this time, it was known that the heroin was flowing to the United States by way of France and Cuba, right? pioneers of heroin trafficking, the Untold family, had gotten snitched on by the Kansas City, St. Louis, and New York families. This would be the cause of what became known as Tampa's era of blood. That would leave Traficantes with complete control over Florida and the French connection to 100% pure China white heroin, right? And pure cocaine from South America, all through their stronghold of Cuba, starting with the Antonori bosses being brutally murdered. The Bloody War would change the landscape of drug trafficking forever. And Charlie, he was connected. Every week he crossed the bridge to Tampa, right? He picked up cases of liquor, checked on Bolita operations, and reported back to the Elks Lodge, where he was second in command at this point. Traficante is believed to be the silent orchestrator of the bloody hits, right? Because it was obvious that he would be the person to gain from the violence occurring and have power over the entire Bay Area. They didn't go out without a respectable fight though, right? Traficante was also the victim a few times himself. Shotgun blast from an attempted murder of the mob boss landed, right? But failed to accomplish the goal of getting rid of him for power of the rackets in the Bay Area that were a gold mine at the time, right? It made them the nation's #1 drug traffickers. By that winter, Charlie seemed kind of different. His wife said he was jumpy, right? The feds were on everybody. There was a war going on for power, and Charlie knew his time was coming, one way or the other. Like we said earlier, Lucky Luciano had made a deal and was working with the feds in return for his freedom and deportation back to Italy. Congress was now holding hearings to gain understanding of what the mafia was, how it worked, and what they did. Friends noticed with Charlie that he just wasn't himself. Charlie was hot and fighting cases from every direction. One thing he noticed that scared him was witnesses and others who got arrested coming up murdered, right? He knew this was very much a possibility for him. And on Saturday, February the 18th, 1953, Charlie Williams walked into a barbershop in Ybor City, just like he always did, but this time, old Charlie didn't walk out alive. Just like usual, old Charlie sat down in the chair at Taridio's barbershop, right? Got a clean shave, right? Chatted with the barber, nothing out of the ordinary. Outside, his secretary Ethel waited in his Chrysler, clean Chrysler car in front. As Charlie stepped out, a young man, hat low, hands tucked, walked up and fired 2 rounds from a .45 pistol. Charlie dropped. Ethel ran to him screaming, and an ambulance came fast, but it wasn't fast enough because Charlie was dead on the route. Police never found the killer. One witness came forward, but the details was too vague. They really didn't know what time it was back then. Just another gangland killing, they said. Charlie was the 15th unsolved hit in Tampa's mob war. that was known as the era of blood. Old Charlie was gone, man, but he was a boss. More than 3,000 people showed up to Charlie's funeral to show love to Slang, Bolio, Moonshine, Kingpin. Mary Yacht, the county's first black public health nurse, she was even there, right? Gibbs High School coach, NL Love Brown, right? Sang Charlie's favorite hymn, Lead Kindly Light. The man who built his empire outside the law was buried like a statesman. Some call him a gangster, others a genius. But the St. Pete's black community during the darkest days of segregation, Charlie Williams was hope. He played the game by his own rules, and sometimes that's the only way to win. Deep